Thank you very much, Henry, and thank you everyone for inviting me to speak. So I work with Guy, who spoke earlier, and I also work at the Insomnia Clinic in North London. And I'm going to talk a little bit about cognitive behavioural therapy for narcolepsy. So what I'd like to do is be able to give you some really basic techniques that you can take away right now from today and practice yourself, and then also make you aware of other therapies that can be helpful and that you can access more locally to where you live. So, CBT, I've met a few people already who've had CBT. Could I get a show of hands to see you in the room who's had CBT already? Yeah, so a few, okay. Can CBT help manage my narcolepsy? And well, first of all, what is it? It's a way of looking at techniques to have a look at our behaviours and then to try and improve that. And in the model of cognitive behavioural therapy for narcolepsy, it's based on the symptoms of the illness. So it's based on excessive daytime sleepiness, cataplexy, the hypnagogic hallucinations, and sleep paralysis. And then it teaches or tries to help the person to look at ways in behaviour that can modify or reduce those symptoms. And it's recommended as a co-therapy with medications by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and by the European Association of Neurology. So what I'd like to do today is to go through each of the symptoms of narcolepsy and then try and give you some techniques that might help in conjunction with your medications to manage them. So the first one we're going to do is have a look at daytime sleepiness and see what can we do to try and manage that. And the first is really to try and avoid sleep deprivation, and really to try and maintain a regular sleep-wake cycle. And that sounds fine to say in theory, but how actually do you go about doing that? And the first measure we can do is perhaps the most important, and that's anchoring the day. And by that I mean that we get up at the same time 7 days a week, no matter how badly we've slept. And this is a very difficult behavioural technique to try and employ, and I hope I can make it easier for you in the next slide or two. But the rationale behind this is that every hour I spend awake, and this hasn't come out, which is a pity, but every hour I spend awake, that's me gathering sleep fuel. And the more sleep fuel I have, my tank becomes full and I can fall asleep. And for everybody, this is a very individual amount. So each of us need a specific amount of time awake in the day before we have enough sleep fuel to help us sleep. And the slide, unfortunately, hasn't worked, but if we imagine a person arising every morning at 7 a.m., by 11 p.m. they reached their sleep threshold. So for them, they had to be awake for 16 hours before their sleep tank was full and they could fall asleep. And the next, see if this works at all. Oh, it does, great. The next day, they get up at 7 a.m. again, and by 11 p.m. they've enough sleep fuel collected so they can fall asleep. And so on. What happens if they have a lie-in at the weekend and they don't get up until 11 a.m.? Will they have enough sleep fuel gathered by 11 p.m.? No, it's going to take a lot longer, isn't it? So if they lie until 11 a.m., they're not going to have enough sleep fuel collected until 3 a.m. And this is a very common phenomenon for everyone, including people with narcolepsy, and it brings instability into our sleep-wake system and makes us more prone to daytime sleepiness. And so that weekend lie-in, even though it's culturally very important for our sleep, it's extremely dangerous. And in this sort of example, it's the equivalent of me saying, okay, if we lie in at the weekends, that's the equivalent every weekend of going from London to Delhi. And if I said, okay, every weekend let's go to Delhi and come back and fit right back into life again on a Monday, for example, you'd think that was crazy. And this is the equivalent. So if you've anchored your day, if you've get up at the same time 7 days a week, then we need to look at what time we should sort of aim for bed. And this we talk about having a sleep threshold. And the best thing we can try and do is match our time asleep to our time in bed. So if I think I get about 8 hours sleep, And even though that's very broken, but if I add up all the bits, and I think that's 8 hours, if I get up at 8 a.m., then my sleep threshold should be around midnight. So I should try and match all the bits of sleep I get in the night, add those together, and try and match that to my time in bed. In order to make these techniques somewhat more manageable, I sort of advise everyone to make a nest. And a nest is an area that's outside the bedroom, if you have access to another room. That might be a sofa or another comfortable chair where you have a blanket and a collection of materials that you really enjoy and get pleasure of. So when you're awake in the night and you can't go back to sleep, you will go to the nest, do something that you enjoy, something that adds quality to your life, and then go back to bed when you feel sleepy. Or likewise, if you'd anchored your day at 7 a.m. and you think the rest of the household is having a lie-in, I'm being sold short, why don't I get my lie-in? Then you go to the nest at 7 a.m. and you get to watch the films that nobody else in the house allows you watch, or you get to listen to the music that nobody else likes you listening to. So you're still relaxing, but you're awake in the nest, so you're collecting that sleep fuel that's going to drive continuous sleep at night time. A lot of us, when we have sleep difficulties, we begin to pollute, if you like, what we do in the bedroom. So you might think yourselves, as I show these activities, how many of these do I do in my bedroom? So do I watch TV? Do I listen to the radio? Am I on my computer? Do I talk on the phone? Do I text, exercise, eat, do the ironing, study, pay bills, read, meditate, argue? Whatever else I might do in the bedroom, over time, a lot of us begin to do other activities. And this confuses our brain. Our brain then begins to forget what the bedroom is for. And so begins to associate the bedroom, instead of for sleeping, it begins to associate the bedroom with all of these activities. And it can be that I could feel sleepy on the sofa, I can feel sleepy in a chair, but I cross my threshold of my bedroom and that sleepiness is gone from me. Why is that? And that's because my brain is expecting me to do all of these activities, not just to sleep. So we ban these activities from the bedroom and we say keep these outside and keep the bedroom solely for sleeping, intimacy, and for getting dressed. And over time, the brain will then see the bed, begin to associate this with sleep, and quality of sleep will improve. And I hope I can show you a video of this in action.
Time for Jason and Kirsty to investigate. The cameras are going into Sheila's very own nocturnal lair.
Over 20 years.
Years of odd nighttime antics mean she no longer sleeps with husband Neil. But she does still have a bedtime companion.
So you can see how it's a night camera. You can see how busy the bedroom is.
And
Right,
Boo the
from
dog
her iPad,
isn't
her dog
the
Bo
only
is
thing
on the
vying for Sheila's
bed.
attention.
Wool and craft things there. It's a really busy bedroom. I bet she's not sleeping at 10 o'clock.
And indeed, 3 hours later, Sheila is showing no signs of sleep.
She's fixed herself a snack. Where's she off to now?
She's about to make...
Back in Lincolnshire,
So
Kate
television,
Baker Sheila is
they
warming to the
do a
task
remake of her bedroom. You
decluttering
don't
her
have to go
room.
that far.
It's amazing the amount of junk you collect over the years.
She's even given it a makeover, but will it be enough to convince Jason she's serious about calming her nighttime activities? The finishing touches are a new bed for Sheila, and Jason's brought a new bed for someone else.
We have a brand new bed for Boo as well.
He's not that convinced.
Look, just like this. Oh, look at that. Do you like it?
This is a really nice, calming bedroom.
Exactly. This is a sleep room now, as opposed to the workroom that it was before.
Absolutely.
So Sheila says it there. This is a sleep room now, not the workroom it was before. And it's very tempting when we have sleep difficulties that the bed and bedroom becomes sort of mission control center. And like Sheila, we've got lots of other activities around the bed, such as the wool, iPad, her dog, And we really forget that, the brain forgets that this is a room where we sleep. So by Sheila just removing those activities outside, her brain reconnects, I know what this room is for, and it really improves sleep quality, a really very powerful technique. If the clip went on a bit further, you'd see Sheila, who would swear she can't sleep before 2:30 or gets very disrupted sleep, struggles to stay awake till midnight now and gets sleep in a consolidated one block. Prior to bed, it's very important that we develop something that we call a buffer zone. And this is a period where we begin to move our mind and our body into a very relaxed state. And we recommend that this period is about an hour and a half before our sleep threshold, before our bedtime. And we recommend that people begin this by a bath. And there's a number of reasons for this. It's easier to switch off the body than it is the mind. And if my body is in a relaxed state, my mind will follow. My mind will say, okay, stand down, body is nice and floppy and relaxed. I needn't be so worried, I needn't be so anxious. The bath also increases our body temperature, and when we move to a colder environment, we lose heat. And losing heat is a powerful stimulus to release melatonin, the sleeping hormone. So if we really want to get our melatonin levels up, then this is, and the timing is crucial, then this is one good way of doing it. The other is by dimming the lights at home. So again, our melatonin, the sleeping hormone, is switched on in darkness, it's switched off in brightness. So really dimming the lights at home help. Even these lights are enough to delay my melatonin secretion by up to 2 hours. And it means I don't get my peak of melatonin when I should, and it means I'm still making melatonin in the morning when I'm meant to be up and alert. Then really to engage in relaxing activities, and this is really not to get ahead with the day, not to answer work emails, not to clean out the cupboards or do whatever you might do, but really just to go on a holiday. It's permission to absolutely relax and do those things that you really, really enjoy. Trying to empty the mind if we can as well before we get into bed is a really good habit to get into, and it's quite simple to do. Getting a simple sheet of paper and writing down, just thinking for 1 or 2 minutes, what was bad about today? What made today quite bad? What made today quite nice? What made today quite good? And what can I do about either of these? So how can I sort of stop the bad things or minimize them a little bit, or how can I get more of the things that made my life pleasurable? And if I'm able to write that down before I go to bed and empty my mind, it means my mind won't attack me in the night with those worries. So I'm really trying to clear my head before I even enter the bedroom. And it's not enough to think about these things. We've really got to write them down. And we're not entirely sure why, but there's something in the motor act of writing that tells the worry centers of the brain, shh, be quiet. So if we put people in a fancy scanner and we get them to worry, we see the worry centers of the brain light up. If we tell them to say that worry out loud, that worry centers still stay lit up. But if we get them to write down the worry, those worry centers dim. We don't know the reason why, but it's just a powerful technique. Sorry, yeah. It's a physical action, that's right. Typing. So there's no evidence that typing helps. It's the actual physical act of writing. So in my groups, when people come with iPads and they're typing away, I remove all them and back to pen and paper and writing. Yeah. And then to try, and as I said, it's easier to relax the body than it is the mind, and then it's to bring in a relaxation technique called progressive muscular relaxation, which we've essentially stolen from yoga. And at the very end, if everybody is willing, I'd like to give us a quick demonstration of this at the very end, so I'll come back to this later. Scheduled napping is really very important, and in narcolepsy, the best timed, best before medications, and usually to have a 15 to 20 minute nap between 12:30 and 5. And 1 or 2 naps in every bit of research that has been done, it benefits virtually everybody with narcolepsy. And Guy was speaking earlier about, somebody asked about progression of narcolepsy and what happens when the medications, for example, seem to begin to fail. And it reminded me of a gentleman I had in clinic last week who came back in saying, my dexamphetamine isn't working anymore. And it was working, but what had happened is life had got too busy and he'd stopped taking his napping. He'd stopped putting in his scheduled naps. And we'd worked so hard to put those in, but they went by the wayside when life took over, which is very understandable. And that was the reason for him why it seemed like his condition was getting worse, but actually he'd forgotten one of the important treatments that we'd put in. And these are really, really very important in treating excessive daytime sleepiness.
So why don't those naps affect your sleep pattern?
Yeah, brilliant. So because we're having them before 5 p.m, one should never nap 6 hours before the desired sleep time. So that's why the timing is crucial in there. That gives us a good 6 hours clear before bedtime. And all the studies that have been done on this, it is between these two times that they do them. Is that, yeah. Yeah. So a long nap isn't a nap. That's a really good point. But for some people with narcolepsy, 15 to 20 minutes won't do it. And sorry, it's a great point, and they need a bit longer. And so the best evidence says 15 to 20, but like everything, it's a normal distribution curve, if you know what I mean, and there'll be outliers at either end. So for some people, 15 to 20 minutes won't do it, they'll need an hour. Traditionally, we limit naps to 15 to 20 minutes because we don't want people going into deep sleep, the most refreshing part of sleep. And I don't know if when you've had experience of waking from deep sleep, it's a really horrible experience. You feel groggy, your motor control isn't that great, your thinking isn't even that straight. So we try to avoid people having that experience by limiting naps to the 15 to 20 minutes. Did that answer? Yeah, great. So just on this bit for managing daytime sleepiness attacks, try and maintain a regular sleep schedule. And we do this, first of all, by anchoring the day, so trying to get up at the same time 7 days a week, and keeping a sleep threshold, trying to manage our sleep in the night to our time in bed. By using a Nest, that really nice area outside the bedroom where I can go to and relax when I'm not sleeping or when I don't want to start my day, where I can do something that really adds quality to my life. And all the time I'm collecting sleep fuel if I'm doing it first thing in the morning, or if I'm doing it in the middle of the night, instead of lying there awake, being anxious and agitated, and now associating the bedroom as a place of torture and a place that's absolutely where I do all my worrying, I've taken that out of there and I've gone to the Nest to do something I really enjoy. Stimulus control, really keeping the connection between my brain and what the bedroom is as pure as possible. This bedroom is just for sleep and intimacy and getting dressed, and everything else I keep outside of it. Having that buffer zone, that hour and a half before bed that I start with the bath and I dim the lights to get my melatonin up. I try and write down what went well today, what didn't, what I can do about them. And then I just go on pure holiday, just really, really relax before I get into bed. And the scheduled daytime napping like we spoke about. These will not, and they're not only evidence-based in helping managing daytime sleepiness, they'll also help reduce isolated sleep paralysis, the nocturnal hallucinations, and cataplexy. So they help the whole spectrum of the illness. So moving on then, targeting cataplexy. This technique called systemic desensitization. And we can't go through this for everyone in the room, but this is one of the things that you might be able to take away and access locally. So no matter where you live, you will be able to self-refer yourself to IAPT. IAPT stands for Increasing Access to Psychological Therapies. And every psychologist will know this technique. They'll have used it for lots of other conditions. And fair enough, they may not have applied it to cataplexy, and you may need to help them with that bit, but they can definitely help you with the technique. And in the technique, the person in a very relaxed state, in a very safe environment, begins to imagine those situations that they fear bring on the cataplexy. And you start with the one that's the least anxiety-provoking. And then you rehearse that with the therapist until its power to trigger and bring about cataplexy is either reduced or lost. And this is very similar to the technique that's used with simple phobias, for example, with spider phobia. This is the same sort of psychological technique. So every psychologist will know how to do this. And it's about you thinking then of that hierarchy. What I am afraid of that brings on my cataplexy? What are my triggers? And then practicing or exposing them in a safe environment and practicing them until their power is reduced or lost. Does that make sense to everyone? At least, yeah, okay. For sleep paralysis, there are a few evidence-based techniques. The first one is hypnosis. And there are a few papers on this showing that it's really very, very helpful. Hypnosis is available on the NHS as well. So I know of one centre in London that does it, and I can speak to people about that afterwards if they're interested. Progressive muscular relaxation, which I've mentioned already and we'll talk about at the very end, is evidence-based to help also. And then when you're in the attack, and I'm sure most of you know this, to try and focus rather than on moving the whole body or trying to speak, that needs a lot of muscle groups, just trying to focus on one small muscle group. So for example, just trying to focus on moving your baby finger, for example. And that helps just to snap out of the attack. So nocturnal hallucinations, a technique called imagery rehearsal therapy. And again, this is something people should be able to access locally. Have people heard of this technique? No, okay. So it started being used for nightmares, and nightmares are a very common part of narcolepsy as well. And it's where we change what happens in the nightmare when we're awake. So for example, if I have a recurring nightmare where I'm being chased in a dark wood, I would then practice this with the therapist, and I would change the ending when I'm awake. So yes, I'm being chased in the dark wood, but then someone taps me on the shoulder and I turn around and I see a really friendly, smiley face, and they say, David, here's the glove you dropped. I say, oh great, thank you very much. And the more I practice this in my awake state, the more it gets incorporated into REM, into my dreaming state of sleep. And you can have as much fun with this as you like, and you can make it as personal to you. So I had one person 2 weeks ago who's a big Superman fan, keeps believing they're trapped in their room. So we changed it that Superman comes, slides the roof off the building, rescues them and takes them away. And with more practice, the more you write this, the more you practice this, the more it becomes incorporation into sleep. This is not only good for nightmares, but it also helps with those hypnagogic, hypnopompic hallucinations. And again, clinical psychologists will know image rehearsal therapy. So via the IAPS, they will know this technique, even if they haven't met somebody with narcolepsy before. So then there's sort of general sleep advice and life advice that would be a part of any model of CBT for narcolepsy. And this again has the aim of improving sleep quality. So sleep hygiene, who's gone through sleep hygiene? Yeah, a lot of it. Does it work? Okay, good. So it works as part of a package, I think. It on its own never solves that much, but as part of a package it can help. So if we look at food and drink, alcohol is a double-edged sword. It's great to get me off to sleep, but 2 hours after my last drink, I go into withdrawal. And we normally think of withdrawal as something that only happens to people with alcoholism, but it happens all of us. The liver doesn't like not having to metabolize the alcohol, so it sends a message to the brain saying, oi, wake up, go look for another drink. So it's best to do your withdrawal period before you get into bed. So leave a 2-hour gap at least between your last drink and bed. Never go to bed hungry. Hunger will disturb our sleep. But we don't want to be like Sheila in the video. So what's the problem with cake and tea at 3 a.m? So the tea is caffeine, doesn't it? And the cake is a sugar rush. That's going to get us going. And if I do this after a few nights, my body will get really used to it. So even if I was sleeping at 3 a.m, my body will wake me up and say, David, don't we normally have tea and cake around now? Yeah. So don't go to bed hungry, but try not to eat during the night. The bedroom should be cool. So a lot of us have our bedrooms too warm, and the ideal temperature is around 18 degrees. And that's again because I want to be warm, so layer the bed, you be warm in bed, but the environment must be a bit colder so I can lose heat into that environment so I can keep my melatonin production going. Should be quiet, which again is understandable, and dark again because we want to keep our melatonin secretion going at night. And of course, keeping to the principle of stimulus control, that I just use my bedroom for sleep, intimacy and getting dressed. No clock watching, no TVs, mobile phones, dogs, cats, or whatever else might disturb my sleep. Try to exercise. Overwhelming evidence that people who exercise, particularly in the afternoon and evening, and the exercise can be anything, it's just to get you out of puff. You know you've done enough when you're a bit breathless, that's fine. If you manage to do that, you get more slow wave sleep, deep sleep, than those who don't exercise. So to get the most refreshing part of sleep, then we really want to try and exercise every day until we're out of puff. And then check the medications that are taken at night time. And my profession are horrific at giving proper timing advice about medications. So I just want to mention two of the very common ones that people might use. So things like ibuprofen, so the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they completely inhibit the secretion of melatonin, the sleeping hormone. So really, I try and get people not to use those at night time. Or propranolol, a lot of people use to try and help manage anxiety. Any of the beta blockers, they absolutely inhibit the secretion of melatonin as well. So if that's an issue for anyone, I'd be very happy to give general advice at the end as well. So a little word on caffeine. Caffeine and any over-the-counter stimulants, particularly when you're on other stimulants, should be discussed with your sleep doctor, because 6 strong cups of coffee is about 600 milligrams. That's the same as 5 milligrams of dexamphetamine or 400 of modafinil. So it can be quite a dose. And we don't want it after midday because we don't want to disturb our sleep cycle. Coffee, depending on the person and their genetics, it can last up to 10 hours in the body. So that sort of double espresso I have at 2 p.m, by midnight, half of that is still circulating actively in my body. And if I go a bit more scientific, when I said earlier, every hour awake I'm collecting sleep fuel, the name of that sleep fuel is adenosine, that chemical, and caffeine stops the buildup of adenosine. It stops the buildup of our sleeping fuel. There is a caveat, of course. If you feel so sleepy that you're going to put yourself or someone else at danger, then you must have a caffeinated beverage. And it's best to have that first, set an alarm for 20 minutes, and nap somewhere safe. So why would you have the caffeinated drink first? Say that.
So you feel better when you get out.
That's it. So it takes that length of time to get in the circulation and to be active completely. That's it. And then you only continue with your activity when you feel it's safe to do so. If there's difficulty in sleeping in the night, don't chase sleep. So if you imagine if I have my hand outstretched and there's a bird in my hand, if I ignore the bird, it'll stay there nice and calmly. But the minute I go, hi little bird, look at you, off it flies into the corner of the room and I go after it. Sleep is the same. If I ignore sleep, if I don't chase sleep, sleep will come. But the minute I go, oh, I've got to get sleep. If I don't sleep tonight, tomorrow will be a disaster. Oh my goodness, there's only 4 hours left. How am I going to get through that meeting in the morning? I've got to get you. Sleep is gone. Yeah. So try not to chase sleep. And if you're not sleeping, try and make use of that nest. Try and get out, do something relaxing, go back again when you're sleeping, or try the relaxation technique I'm going to show you at the end. There are other avenues of support that are very important, but these will be very individual as well. So people were asking earlier about psychosocial aspects of narcolepsy, and these are phenomenally important and really affect quality of life. And there are specific forms of therapy that can help in adjusting to the diagnosis or even helping with a sense of bereavement for that length of time of life that's been lost while you were waiting to get diagnosed, and to help with the associated mental health difficulties. And as I was saying earlier with Guy, depression and health anxiety and social anxiety tend to be the more common ones, but there are specific help available for these. Liaison with employers, and I know the organisation does that brilliantly, and I saw the leaflets in the pack. But really, you want to avoid late shifts or changing to hours, and working in the day is highly recommended. And sleep doctors would very happily write supporting letters of recommendation as well for people, and I do that regularly. And then seeking other sort of therapies to maybe help keep you mentally alert during the day, to sort of stop that variability in mental alertness. And there's one technique called the Pomodoro technique, and this was started by an American to help college students with procrastination. So when they had all their university work to do, and they rather tidy the room or meet their friends rather than get on with the work. And this is about setting a timetable for the day, for the morning, and setting an alarm, and the original alarms were little tomatoes, and that's why it's called the Pomodoro technique, for 20-minute blocks, and saying, okay, I am responding to emails in this 20-minute block. If a thought comes to my mind, or if I get distracted with something else, I write it on a sheet of paper, but for these 20 minutes, I've designated my time is on these emails or whatever work I've set myself out. And then having a break where you look at those things that came to mind, or you deal with the distractions that try to take you away from your work. And making a schedule where you put in scheduled napping and your medications or caffeine use with this can be really very helpful. So I've mentioned this technique a couple of times, and this is evidence-based in reducing sleep attacks during the day, reducing cataplexy and nocturnal awakenings. And it's a process where we gently tense and relax our bodies in succession. And when our body is relaxed, it sends a signal to the mind to relax as well. And you work your way around the body. And as I said, relaxing the body really helps to relax the mind. So would you mind if we tried it for 5 minutes? Would you be willing to give it a go? Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to steal a chair. So you can find clips of this on YouTube. Most of the ones on YouTube have links to breathing. We don't necessarily need to link it to breathing. We just need to do it as simply in contracting and relaxing various muscle groups and working our way slowly around the body. So if you're able to put everything down and push your chair back so you can move out your legs without kicking your neighbour. And I'm going to do it as well with you. Okay, so try and get relaxed as you can in these chairs. I just want you to try and be as floppy as you can. Just close your eyes for me. And this is not hypnosis. You're completely in charge of what's happening. If you have a muscle group that's sore, just skip this step and join in with us the next time. A normal course of this would be around 15 minutes, but we're going to do a shortened version, and I'm going to switch from left to right. If you get your left and right confused, don't worry. Just swap the sides that we're using. So when I say go, I'm going to want you to contract the muscle group that I'm talking about. Just tense the group. I don't want you contracting until it's painful. Just keep some tension there. And then hold that tension until I say let go. So we're going to start with the muscles in the forehead. So when I say go, I want you to squeeze your eyes tightly and raise your eyebrows to the ceiling. Go. So squeeze the eyes together, raise your eyebrows to the ceiling. Feel that tension across your forehead. Hold it there. Hold it there. And let go. We're now going to move to the muscles of the upper back and shoulders. So when I say go, I want you to bring your shoulder tips to your ears and bend your shoulders backwards so the blades are almost touching each other. go. So shoulder tips up to the ears, and then bend your shoulder backwards as much as you can. Feel that tension across the top of your back and shoulders. Hold it there. And let go. Let's relax back into your chair again. We're going to move to the biceps on the left arm. So when I say go, I want you to leave your left fist loose, but bend your arm, focusing all the tension on the biceps. Go. So flex your arm, bend your arm, leave your hand loose, but really squeeze that biceps. And hold it, and hold it, and let go. Good. We're now going to move to the muscles in the right forearm. So when I say go, I want you to leave your right shoulder and elbow loose, but make the tightest fist you can with your right hand. Go. So nice loose right shoulder and elbow, squeezing that right fist so we feel all the tension in the muscles between the elbow and the wrist. Hold it there. Hold it there. And let go. We're now going to move to the left thigh muscle. And when I say go, I want you to lift your left leg out straight, pointing your toes to the ceiling. Go. So left leg out straight, toes to the ceiling. Hold it there. Hold it there. And let go. Now we're going to move to the muscles in the right calf. So when I say go, I want you to bend your right leg and push your toes to the floor like you're pressing on an accelerator. Go. So bending the right leg, pointing the toes down to the floor, feeling that tension in the right calf. Hold it there. Hold it there. And let go. Now I just want you to notice just the sensations in your body. And when you're ready, then just open your eyes again. So that's a very shortened version. Does anybody feel a bit looser than they were before we started? Yeah, a bit, okay. With practice, and if you're able to do both sides of the body, this becomes really a very powerful relaxation technique. And with time, the mind will begin to anticipate what's coming. So when you start with the muscles of the face, the body will go, I know what we're up to now. We're up to relaxing. And it will automatically then help the muscles to relax even more. So I hope Henry doesn't mind me saying this, but when we were doing our work together, Henry was always like, David, where's the evidence for this? Where's the paper for this? So for those who want to know a little bit more, then this is quite a good review paper that's available free through ResearchGate. So even if you just put this into Google, this paper will come up. And you'll see that this talks about the techniques that I've gone through. At the end, thank you ever so much.